This is another episode number 2 for the year 2025 of Service Trucks USA, the podcast. And I'm doing something a little different. I'm going to interview 2 guys. Today's podcast is specifically designed to give you guys an insight about refurbishing service trucks and what goes on in the equipment world in terms of upfits. And these are guys that are on the front lines of this industry. They've been doing it for a long time. They're good friends of mine, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you. So let's start with this good-looking guy right here. Who are you?
Forrest Allen with RTS Restoration out of East Texas.
Forrest Allen, RTS Restoration out of East Texas. East Texas, you mean up there by Louisiana?
Very, very close.
Up there by Shreveport?
Shreveport.
All right. And then you brought your buddy down.
Yes.
Ruben with Longhorn Outfitters.
Ruben, who?
Ruben Salomon out of Longhorn Outfitters.
Longhorn Outfitters. Okay, so how I came to meet these gentlemen is, what is it, about 5-6 years ago?
Yes.
You and I met. You were running
I was managing a commercial truck dealership out of Marshall, Texas.
and I was working for Summit, and we became friends. And you talking back and forth, I think I helped inspire him a little bit, but he did it on his own. He started his own company, right? RTS Restoration. And over the years, I've been a big supporter and champion and encourager, because as you guys know, I like mentoring people. And then at the same time that's happening, you were already friends with Ruben, right?
Yes. So I met Ruben while managing the dealership. He was slapping some beds on some trucks at that time. And he always said, man, we ought to partner up. We ought to do some stuff. And so it just kind of all worked out.
Okay. So what are we talking about today? Well, here's my thoughts. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening in our current industry, and I wanted to get your perspective because I think you guys have a better pulse of what's happening right now. So let me set the stage. Back in 2019 and 20, we got hit by COVID, right? And it completely changed. Would you agree? It completely changed the marketplace.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So my memory was working for Summit. All of a sudden, we had a shortage of chassis. We couldn't get chassis from anybody. Prices spiked. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that had wheels and an engine that ran, all of a sudden it was doubling almost in price. It was seeing 10, 20, 30% increases, right?
Absolutely.
And that was pretty consistent. And so it really wasn't hard to make money. If you just had the inventory, if you had stock, you could make money. Well, would you say that's the case now?
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right. So I think that the market hasn't come back to the levels that it was in 2015-16, but it's definitely not the same as it was in 2022.
No, there's definitely been a fall in the market. Yeah.
So what I wanted to talk to you guys about specifically is, let's talk with Ruben first. Ruben, what does Longhorn Upfitters do? What is it that you guys actually do?
Well, we outfit commercial trucks. We install service beds, flat beds, crane bodies. We do a little bit of refurb. Pretty much anything and everything work truck related.
Okay. Now, you work with various manufacturers, right?
Correct.
And do you do some refurbs as well?
We do. We mainly focus on used equipment. We're here for the smaller guys, for the smaller companies, the people that can't get into the the map hides and the general truck and stuff like that.
So here's what I've noticed, and this is where you guys listening to this podcast can benefit. We know some stuff that can save you guys a ton of money. We got some inside scoop information. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
So let's start with what you do, Ruben, specifically. When you're selling your bodies and focusing on used, are you refurbishing the chassis? Or are you refurbishing bodies? What exactly are you focusing on the used side?
So we only focus on the bodies. We don't do anything with the chassis.
Okay.
We buy used equipment anywhere we can get it. We bring it back and we refurb it, give it a new life. We'll put it on pretty much any chassis you bring us.
So where that comes in handy is if Napai, for example, is selling an 11-foot body with 40 inside packs, some drawers, a bumper, that's going to cost what, about 14, 15 grand without a crane?
Yeah. If it's not a crane body, you're definitely,
$15,000 plus. And what can happen is if you find gentlemen like this to work with, you can often pick up the equivalent body that'll almost look identical, that'll be refurbished, and you could pick it up for half that, can't you?
Half the price, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's your first opportunity. So what I found is that, and I learned this many, many years ago when I was at the dealership, what we did is if I could take a refurb body and mount it on a brand new chassis, for all intents and purposes, I got a brand new truck. So from the lender's perspective, it's still a brand new truck, but I save 50% of the cost of the body.
Absolutely.
And that's an opportunity to save a lot of money, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what are some of the things that you try? What are some of the dangers or pitfalls that you specifically come across, Ruben, when you're looking at these refurb bodies? Like, are there bodies you just don't want to touch that aren't worth trying to refurb?
Well, yeah, you got to definitely know what you're doing when you're looking at these bodies. You got to kind of buy newer bodies, not the older style bodies.
Okay.
A lot of these bodies, when the trucks out on the field, get really beat up. So you really got to inspect them, make sure they're not cracked or anything like that.
Is there a difference in the quality of a steel? Is there a distinct difference between the actual material that makes up the bodies from one manufacturer to another?
Definitely. Yeah, there's definitely a difference.
Give me some examples. What are the differences? How does that manifest itself? You can jump in here.
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
So what we're seeing a lot of now is beds being imported from Mexico, and they'll brand them whatever. They don't have a branding. They usually got fancy chrome handles on them. They'll have some flashy looking LED lights on them. But long term, and I'm talking like 2 years, like not 10 years, 2 years later, they're leaking, the handles are breaking. The handles aren't something that we can go to like our aftermarket, handle guys and the guys that, we buy stuff to refurb, say a Caseco bed. Caseco's bought out by Redding. Mm-hmm. I know where to go to get that handle. I know where to go to get that spring, the spring for the door. I know where to go to get anything I need for that bed. Meanwhile, these Mexico imported beds, like they break a handle, I really don't know where to go.
So I'm going to go one step further because I actually have a little inside scoop on what's happening. So what happens is Mexico's getting their steel from China.
Correct.
And the steel has imperfections in it. I guess there's a quality standard in steel. I didn't know this until I started working for Summit. And so if it's not certified, what do you call it? ISO 9000 or whatever, ISO certified, the quality of the steel can vary from one manufacturer to another. So they bring this steel into Mexico and then they fabricate these bodies. And then because of the free trade agreement, they can bring these bodies pretty cheap into the United States. And then they're being remarketed by various dealers.
Yes.
And as you guys out there in the field are getting these and you think you're getting a great deal, but what we find out when Forrest and I are talking and working together, there's a big quality difference between one manufacturer and another, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about drawers. Do you supply drawers?
We don't.
Okay.
So
one of you guys do.
The deal with the drawers is, the drawers, they tend to get worn out. People steal them out of their box before. It's just something that's so specific to a drawer pack or to a body,
right?
That you can have 10 drawers there, but you don't have what the customer needs in the used market, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody wants a new one, we can order a new one, but we're not giving them any great discount or anything.
Okay. So you and I, Forrest, we've been doing our deal. So what happens with me was when I set up my side hustle, primarily because of COVID, because I couldn't find new vehicles, I started going out and buying used vehicles. I was using Summit's money and running the deals through Summit, but it wasn't cost effective for me to run those trucks back to Kansas and get them refurbished. They were already bogged down doing a bunch of other stuff, and logistically it just didn't work. So I was hunting for somebody here in Texas that could do my refurbs. And I encourage Forrest, I go, dude, if you can start this business, I can support you. I can pump business your way. And it's worked out. But one of the things that we did is I bring these trucks to Forrest at RTS, and then he goes through them and reconditions them. And that's kind of the core of my business model right now, is that when I work with a client, I make it so that the client gets the benefit of a dealer in the full refurb shot, but they hold on to the margin. They hold on to the profit. So when I work at Summit, I got to hold 16-20% margin. Yeah. And that's a lot of margin that I got to hold just to make the deal happy, to keep them happy. Now I don't have to hold that kind of margin because I just add my fee and we pass through 100% of the cost of the refurb. Now the seller gets more money for their vehicle, and the buyer is able to buy a quality vehicle that, they can have confidence in. And it's been a great deal. But what I want to talk about next is, how terrifying was it for you guys to start this company? So who wants to go first to talk about the danger and fear of starting your own company? First of all, who wants to go first? Ruben?
I can go first. It's terrifying. So before I started my company, I worked for what is now a competitor, right? I worked for them for 13 years.
Okay, wait. I want to make sure to set the stage, right? You basically stole all their customers and started your own company, right? Is that kind of what they're thinking, or?
I'm not sure what they're thinking. But so I worked for them for a long time, and honestly, it fell in my lap. I worked for them for a long time. New management came in. We got sideways. I left. I went to go work and did something completely different.
Now, because we're a podcast, we're like a live, we're like reality TV. You got to give me the dirt, bro. Spill the tea. What happened?
I don't want to talk
sideways.
I don't want to talk about the dirt. So yeah, I went off and I did something completely different. I was actually in a shop, working on vehicles, and my customers, kept calling me, "Hey, can you help?"
Don't you hate when that happens, when you quit and they still call you?
Well, at first I did, and now I'm happy they did.
I'm being facetious.
So, and no, I didn't, so I left it behind. I didn't want to continue doing that. They kept calling me, specifically one family. Dude kept calling me, and he was like, "You gotta help me. You gotta help me." So I put a deal together for him, and then his brother called me, and then his nephew called me. So I worked for them for a little bit, and it got easy. I figured out that I could do this, right? So as customers called me, I kept helping them, but I worked a full-time job, and then I was doing this full-time. And one thing came to another, and here we are, right?
You had to give me this, got to the details, man. Because, okay, now, you guys that are listening to the podcast or watching this video don't know I got 2 wives behind me. So if I don't like you guys' answer, I'm just going to kick you out of the couch. I'm going to bring the wives over. But for the time being, seriously, it has to be freaking terrifying, right? You're actually going to start a company. So do you hire a bookkeeper?
So at first it was very just side hustle.
Okay.
That's actually how we met.
So I'll tell you the story of how we met, and then he can spin off that.
All right.
So OVE is a online place to buy vehicles wholesale.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would go down through OVE, and you're obviously supposed to buy from OVE, but I'd figure out who that dealer was. And I would go,
just for the audience, let me tell you what OVE is. So in the dealership world, there is an online marketplace that is only available to dealers. It's not public facing. And OVE provides kind of like a clearinghouse. They provide all the data on vehicles, cars, trucks.
Yeah.
And they suggest a value, and it allows for dealers to engage in commerce. Right.
It's also a marketplace where if your vehicle didn't sell through the auction, it just gets listed online and you can buy it, but it don't have to go to auction. It can be at the dealer, and it's wholesale dealer to dealer.
Okay, so that's why I wanted everybody to understand that. Okay.
So you're supposed to bid and all that, but with these work trucks, I got too many questions. So I'm looking for like the logo in the background to the company. So it's a lot of cold calling. Hey, I think you own this truck on OVE. So I end up here in Dallas with a dealer, a very well-known dealer that actually sells upper-end vehicles, like high-end used vehicles. Well, they also happen to have a fleet of like 100 rental trucks. And when these rental trucks come off lease, they have the cab and chassis truck, but apparently whoever they're leasing them to is maintaining the bed, refurbing the bed. Apparently it's a flatbed and it's got some special equipment on it. So you can't find these cab and chassis trucks at this time during the market. So I'm happy, I'm excited, but I'm going to have to put new beds on them. Well, I'm talking to the manager that I'm buying these or looking at these two trucks. And he says, man, I got a phone number. I want you to call this guy. He does used flatbeds and used utility beds. And I said, really? You've used him? And I'm looking around and, there's $1 million cars, used cars sitting in this showroom.
Right.
And we're out here crawling around under this muddy work truck. And I'm like, he would never lead me in the wrong direction. So I call Ruben up and we agree on a flatbed and a utility bed. And they handled the transport. The dealership handled transport to Ruben. Ruben had sent me some pictures. It was whenever I went to pick the vehicles up. Like, you want to tell him where you was at?
Go ahead.
So I'm a country boy, kind of sheltered back in the country, if we rewind back 20 years ago. So to come to the big city of Dallas, I mean, even in the nicer areas, like I used to be, rewind back 5 years ago, I'm concerned in the nicer areas. Like, should I be here? Like, am I allowed to be here? So we're going into a lower, a very rough side of town, in my opinion. And I don't believe I belong here.
Okay.
And then
Irving, Texas, to be exact.
and the sign don't say truck upfitter, it don't say, it says hell repair, and there's a gate that's shut. And I think I called him and I'm like, hey, where do I go? And he's like, oh, just park at the gate. Well, we're parked at the gate and, half the trucks sticking out in the road. They're doing road construction. People are walking up and down the sidewalk. Like, I'm real concerned. But anyway, I get there and I couldn't quite figure it out. Like, because there's a body shop going on over there. There's a hell repair guy. He's like, hey, man, I got some more flatbeds over here. And so I did the business because the price was right. But I was concerned. I would have never done the deal had it not been the dealership that referred me, and then them dropping the trucks off. I wouldn't have dropped the trucks off there. I would have just kind of too many red flags.
So what'd you think when this Forrest, this country bumpkins and
So
East Texas shows up?
let's hold on. I guess he's expecting to show up to a place where he's gonna see everything nice and all that, right? This is at the beginning of when I was starting the business. Before it was a business, I had contacts, so I was doing business with that dealership. What I did is my buddy owns a body shop, and I rented a piece of his lot. So I didn't have a shop. I had beds stored at his lot, and that's where the trucks would get delivered, and then they'd go somewhere else to get installed.
Okay.
Which is something that, we didn't disclose at the time.
I'm asking him, I'm like, man, where are you installing these beds? Because at the time I'm starting to dabble. I'm managing a commercial truck dealership and it's hard to get trucks. So a customer comes in and he don't like that utility bed. He wants a flatbed on that truck. Well, to take it across the street to, the new retail truck outfitter, it's like $10,000 to swap beds. It's dollar signs that so I'm out at the farmer's field buying up all the flatbeds, buying all the utility beds, and I got a stack of them. Now, I don't know what fits what at this time. So we're starting to swap beds. And because I get a commission off of trucks that are being sold, I'm not really marking these beds up at all. Like, I'm making my money for the dealership. So in my mind, I'm doing the dealership a favor. Now, a year or two later, the dealership changes hands and we have a lot of disagreements. They think that, you're getting paid off this, you're double dipping on this, that's how I ended up in. But at the time, I'm just trying to make it. I'm just trying to move metal, as they say. And
So what's happening is you got this gig, you're bootstrapping it, you got it as a side hustle. When do you formally start your business, Ruben? Like, when do you formally get the gig organized and say, okay, I'm officially a business?
So it took us 6 months, it got to the point where, like I said, I was working a full-time job, and then this side hustle became a full-time job. That's where I met my wife, right? So she sees me just working 18, 20-hour days sometimes, and she's like, this is going to kill you. You got to do something, right? And this is where the fear comes in of leaving something that's sure. It's a sure job. It pays great. Bills are getting paid. You don't want to let that go to go do something that's working, but you don't know if it's really going to work long term, right? So at the time, for the place I was working, it was a second shift. They had opened a second shift because of COVID and all that to kind of spread the people thin, right? Well, everything started getting back to normal and they let go of the second shift. Well, since they let go of the second shift, I was one of the guys that they let go. So that was my opportunity to give it a shot, right? Me and her sit down and we talk about it. She's like, yeah, I think you can do it. I'm gonna give it a shot. We're gonna try it a few months and we'll see. We're still in this yard, right? So we're in this yard, we're giving it our all. I mean, we're seeing money that we've never seen, so it catches our attention. Me and my nephew had a trip. We went to Cancun and we're on the beach shooting the shit, drinking beer. And while we're in Cancun, me and him are talking about the shop. And we're like, man, we should get a shop. We should do this, talking big game out there. We get back to the States and I forget about it. I'm comfortable, right? Well, I leave. We get back to the States. We're here for a couple of days and me and her go to Florida. When I get back from Florida, he has a meeting set up so we can go look at a shop, right? So he forced my hand. Yeah, we went, we looked at the shop, we decided we wanted it. We filled out everything, and the lease manager says we can have it, and then he backtracks. He's like, you've never been in business, there's no history. I don't know if you're a good fit for us. Well, at this time, I had made up my mind. I wanted that shop. So we sit there, we talk money, we come to an agreement. I get the shop. We're in that shop. It's a 5,000 square foot, one bay in or one door in, one door out kind of shop, more of a warehouse style. And after a year of being there, we outgrow it. So we talk to the lease manager again. He bought a new property. So we're now in a 7,500 square foot shop with multiple bays. So we've only been in business 3 years.
Okay.
And in 3 years, we've been able to grow a lot. Not knowing anything, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into.
Because Forrest and I are good friends, and I just met you, Ruben, I'm spending a little bit more time with Ruben because I got more inside scoop on Forrest stuff. But I have a question: how important was your wife in the process?
Very, very.
How so?
Oh man, I can't. Very important to the point where
Yeah, all these guys going to be listening.
Yeah, no, very.
And I want to, because I have a theory, but it's just in my head.
Yeah.
And don't be embarrassed because she's in the room with
No.
I just want you to tell the audience.
So I'll tell you when I knew she was the one. It was we're still dating, right? And I'm one man truck trailer running around, Oklahoma City to Houston, you name it, wherever there's a body to pick up, we're picking it up. And again, working, 18-hour shifts, having to drive all over town or other states. So the first time I invite her on a road trip, I'm like, hey, I got to go to Oklahoma. I got to pick a body up. And she really thought I was full of shit, She was like, you're not driving that much. So anyways, I invite her out. We get to the Oklahoma border and I'm dozing off, Mind you, she's never driven a truck, a trailer, nothing like that. And she tells me, you want me to drive? And I was like, no. She's like, yeah, I could help you. And as soon as I seen that next exit, I pulled over. She was like, what are you doing? I was like, well, you're going to drive. And she's like, really? You're going to let me drive? I'm like, yeah, sure. Come on. She drove that trailer all the way to where we're going, 4.5 hours. You know, she drove. But as soon as we hit the highway, 3 seconds, I was out. Done. Once we get to our location, I wake up. And of course, she parks on the side of the road so I could drive in, you know. And she's like, I can't believe you let me drive. I said, well, you said you wanted to drive. She's like, what if we would have crashed? I said, man, I would have died either way if I was awake or asleep. I said, but we made it. And ever since, I knew I had a partner. She's driven the truck hundreds, thousands of miles with gooseneck trailers, bumper pull trailers, you name it, fully loaded, empty. But not only that, that was just the beginning. Now in the business, she plays a big role in helping us with the, day-to-day operations, all that. Definitely gives me a lot of encouragement. One of our biggest things is every morning when we wake up, we look at each other and we're like, we got this. No matter what the day brings, we got this. So yeah, definitely.
I like that. So I'm going to switch over to you now, Forrest. So when you and I have been hanging out and I've watched you grow, what would you say, how did your transition from Car Nuts over to your own gig, how did your transition go? Now, if I remember right, your big deal was you had to get your lovely wife, Mandy, on board. But you guys sold your house, right?
Yes. So 2 weeks before Christmas, well, we'll back up. 2 months before Christmas, I'm told, hey, the investor that helped us get through the pandemic and the bad times, we're buying him out. Then it's a father and son. Well, now the son's wanting to buy the father out and let the father stuff out. Well, then fast forward, there was a lot of argument because I've been running the business now for 2 years, and the pandemic time starting out, I didn't know nothing. I came out of the oil field. I just kind of stumbled in there and I could sell trucks. Well, then it went to I could sell trucks a little too good. So now I'm having to buy trucks. Well, then I have to figure out how to get these trucks fixed and in shape to be sold because, you buy these trucks, you're buying them kind of sight unseen most of the time. And there's a lot of issues with people up north sending them down here and selling them and just... They're not sending their best trucks to the auction.
Moving pieces.
Correct. So at some point, I'm doing the buying, the selling, and the refurb, but I'm doing the refurb from a telephone. I'm not out there actually refurbing them. And so I know every mechanic shop in Marshall, Texas. I know every paint and body shop in Marshall, Texas. And then in a 30-mile radius, every neighboring town. And obviously, as they change and as they grow, you may go to the smaller guy or you may, But with all that said, the son who now runs the dealership, me and him, he wanted to buy new trucks and put new beds on them. And I'm like, no, I don't see that as being the way to go. So we butt heads. So 2 weeks before Christmas, we're gonna, you can stay or you can leave. Here's the terms. These terms start January 1st. And the terms weren't,
Weren't attractive.
No. So I stayed up until December 31st. We discussed it. Me and Ruben had discussed doing some deals together out in the country. So yes, I had a nice brick house in the city. Out in the country, we got a bunch of rusty beds stacked up. And we had discussed, we need to build a little shop and refurb these beds. And it could be a business, but we wasn't ready to go into business. And so here I am 2 weeks before Christmas, 2 kids, just swapped them schools too. So there was other things going on. Yeah. And now here I am. Do I go back to work in the oil field or do I go to work doing my own thing? And there was no business name, no plans, no shop. So the only way to make that happen was I owned the land out in the country. It had a small mobile home. It was our camp house. Like we'd have birthday parties out there. We would go there, to get away on the weekend. Everything was paid for. But for the last 4 years, we've been building our life in Marshall around this nice house and new school. And sure. So it was a culture shock for the wife, the kids, everybody. And we end up immediately moving back out to the country, putting up a tent. Have you seen the tent? Yeah. So putting up temporary structure is what the insurance calls it. Turns out you can get them insured. I mean, it's insured that if it blows over, you know.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You're also married.
Yes, yes.
How's your wife fitting into this picture?
She's the owner.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal, dude. You're giving up the security of a job, selling your house, start this side hustle. How do you convince her to go along with the program? Or was she?
I had already convinced her. She was working 3 jobs. She was volunteer teacher at a private school. She was I always get this wrong, occupational therapist, and she was doing the title clerk at the dealership. I convinced her to quit all 2 of the jobs to come to the dealership because I'm managing it. And so my idea is, I have like a 5-year plan for a dealership I don't even own. So she's working in the dealership with me. We're actually running to Houston, running to Dallas. We're starting to put our eyes on these trucks before I buy them through auction. I had hired a guy that me and him turned out to work real well together. He was a sales guy under me, so I'm getting paid off commission. Well, I'm splitting. Now I've done give him part of my commission to sell, but now he can be there and I can run around and I'm establishing, relationships with all these guys. So I need her to quit her job, not only so that she can take care of the kids and all that, but sometimes she's on the road with me and we're going down there and we're throwing her car on a car dolly and pulling it back and she's driving another truck. And, I've already asked way too much of her. She's done quit all her jobs to help me in the dealership before. Also, now I don't have the job at the dealership. So now we do have to go into business or I have to go back to work in the oil field.
So what I'm hearing is the common denominator is the support you get from your wives was critical.
Absolutely.
And you guys are still at the growth phase. You're not successful by definition. You have a real businesses with real books and real accounting. You're making money, but you have visions of becoming something bigger, right? In the future. Right. All right. So I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit to a different direction, and that is this industry. Okay. So my observations are that our clients are getting screwed. This is what I mean by that. The discrepancy between the price of new vocational truck bodies is no longer relevant to the value that they provide, in my opinion. So I focus on service trucks, mechanic service trucks with cranes, big hydraulic cranes, all that kind of stuff. And a new non-CDL medium duty truck on a P or a KW is $270,000. Okay. I'm having a hard time. I do it for a living and I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that number, because when I started 2013 to 14, that same truck was $137,000. Really? That's what that truck used to cost. Basic truck was $137,000. So I'm struggling trying to make this thing work. And that's why I wanted to have you guys on the show, because what I wanted to talk to our audience about is all throughout the country are guys like this. Really good, hardworking young men with dreams and visions. And I'm fortunate to know a bunch of them throughout the United States. And I wanted you guys to get a chance to meet them so that you can understand how our community can benefit through that service trucks community that I'm trying to create. Because if I can hook you guys up with quality young folks like this, it could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the lifespan of a truck by you getting a quality truck that you can be confident in, but at the same time, not necessarily spend the $270,000, $300,000 for a new one. Now, there is an argument for new trucks. Don't get me wrong. There was always going to be new trucks getting bought and sold. But what you guys have to understand is that behind the scenes are hundreds, if not thousands, of guys like this, like Forrest and Ruben, that all they need is encouragement and opportunity, and they can fill the gap, in the marketplace. And that's where I see a tremendous opportunity. So I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit in a different direction. How do you guys manage balance? Like, what do you do? How do you start? Because I don't think there's any difference between a guy running a refurb shop or a guy's doing upfits. I don't think there's any different from a guy starting his own mobile repair shop. I think business is business. We serve a client, but how do you do it and keep your sanity? Like, how do you keep sane? How do you raise kids? What do you do? What would you say to somebody? Like, what have been the biggest challenges that you faced so far in this endeavor that you've taken on?
So the advertisements online that you get whenever you're on Facebook, for like, I get them a lot for the plumber, the service guy, but it's the plumber, the electrician. And if you buy into all that, they have an assembly line process, like they make it, the secret is, this assembly line will get you to the path of success. And the truth is there is no secret. I mean, it comes in phases. Like, for example, I'm in Dallas, 3.5 hours away from home today. Yesterday we was in Houston, 4.5 hours away from home. Tomorrow's a Sunday, and we don't work on weekends. We don't work on Sundays. We go to church on Sundays. But there's a Bible verse, and I don't know it, but it's like, if your cow falls in the mud, do you pull your cow out of the mud if it's a Sunday? And yes, you do. Well, we've done fallen a week behind. I have more trucks, sitting waiting on bids than I've ever had. There's a customer from, we'll say 6 hours away, that's doing a job in town. He just called me and told me all this yesterday. He wants his truck Tuesday. I was going to call, Monday and say, hey, I'm not quite there. Well, us working Sunday is going to deliver that truck on Monday. And I would rather work on Sunday than make that phone call, hey, your truck's not ready, or hey, I'll deliver it for free because I'm not going to get it done till later in the week. Also, we have a new segment or a new business. I'm doing mobile crane repairs. Well, unfortunately, on the books is 2 mobile crane repairs, this coming up week. And if I don't start growing this business, or if I don't follow through with that, like there's too many irons in the fire, but it's just a phase, right? Like, if we had this podcast 2 months from now, that snapshot may look like me and the kids are going to a water park this summer or something like that. So when the money's here to be made, we got to make the money, but we also have to purposely plan to slow down after we've made the money. And it just kind of goes through phases. And so the truth is, can you take off every Sunday? Is that a good? Yes, you can. But will there be Sundays that you have to work? Yes, you do. So the flexibility and discipline to...
How about you, Ben? What about your situation?
So my situation is a little different. Yes, you own the business. You never stop working on it. You're always going to be doing something business related. But within doing stuff business related, you got to take time for you and the wives, you and the kids, right? If you take a trip to go pick up a bed to Houston, you might drive over to Galveston and hang out, right? Well, our thing at the beginning was always the business. I used to live 5 minutes from my shop, and I used to spend all my time at the shop. I mean, we would throw birthday parties at the shop. We were like living at the shop, right? The way we have it set up now is we've created a distance. I live an hour from my shop. So we did that purposely so we wouldn't spend so much time at the shop. At the beginning, it was just us two. So at the beginning, we're doing everything. Now we got a staff. We've put people in place that can take stuff off our plate so we're not always working. So that gives us our balance. Also, we have hours of operations. We only work 7:30 to 4, Monday to Friday. We're closed. So do we do business after hours? Sure. Do we do business on the weekends? Sure. But it's minimal. And that's how me and her find time. We might be out buying a bed, but we'll find a restaurant or something we can go sit down and kind of get our personal time. Because it's very important for me and her to have our personal time.
So I'm going to share a story. This is my own personal story. So once upon a time, I decided I wanted to be an insurance agent. And I was bound and determined. So I ended up with Farmers Insurance Group. I had my own insurance agency, the Kenneth J. Johnson Agency. Prior to that, I was a finance manager in a car dealership, and I was making $100,000 plus a year as a finance manager. So that's the lifestyle that I lived based on that income. So when I became an insurance agency owner, I'm making commissions, and the check that I received had my name on it. Kenneth Johnson, that's what his name was on this check. They used to call it a folio. Well, I didn't really understand this concept. That really wasn't my money. That money belonged to my agency. That wasn't my money, because the agency is who was getting paid by the insurance company, and the agency had to pay self-employment taxes. The agency had to pay the rent on the office and the electric bill, the phone bill, and if I hired staff, and all of this crap had to be paid and pay taxes. And I kept treating that money as if it was my money. And then one day it all came, I had to pay all these people, and I was broke.
Yeah.
I mean, I was upside down. And the reality was I couldn't make that separation between my money and the agency money, even though my name was the same. How do you guys handle money in your business? Like, do you guys set up really good controls, or is that an area where
Well, at this point, we got to work on it. It's getting better. You know, at the beginning, it was my money. You know, and now that we have overhead and employees and bills that, I mean, we didn't know we were gonna have. Definitely, we put money aside for all that.
So for you guys that are listening to this podcast, I'm going to encourage you to do something. The best piece of advice that I could give you ever is get a bookkeeper, get an accountant, sit down with your wife, and get a budget. I can't even spell that stupid word. I hate that word. That word causes me all kinds of indigestion. But, you know, I'm an idiot and I make all kinds of dumb mistakes. But don't make the same mistake as I made. Get a budget and operate your company from a budget. And then when you finish your year, you see there's a bunch of money left over, then reward yourself with the new boat, you know, the new vacation, you know, the new ring, or, you know, the new bag. Reward yourself after you've achieved your objective and make it a family bonus. You can get the whole family involved. Okay. This is our plan, family. This is what we're doing. This is what we're eating ramen. And, you know, we're not going to McDonald's. You know, this is why we're doing it, because at the end of the year, each of us has a bonus that if we all hit it, you're going to get your new, you know, PlayStation, you know, everybody gets something out of the deal, and you're all working towards a common goal. I think that's the best advice I could give anybody that's trying to start a company and trying to start a business, because you'll lose more sleep over money than dang near anything else. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Last thing I want to talk about is, what would you tell a guy that's operating a small business, doing mobile truck repair, heavy equipment repair, your potential client? What would you tell them is something that's going to help them if they're listening to this podcast? Like, what piece of advice would you share with this audience? Like, what could you give them in terms of, you know, a great idea that might help them operate their business better or have a better quality of life or whatever? What kind of advice would you offer?
What is your target? Is it
All right. Right now, it's just guys that work in field trucks. They work in service trucks. They either buy them, sell them, fix them, run them. You know, they're something to do with a service truck. That's our community. We have people that are non-service truck people that are just friends of mine that are listening to the podcast, and they may get something as well. But I'm specifically looking for things that you guys would tell one of your buddies, you know, a friend. You say, hey man, you know what? Let me give you this piece of advice. This is what I learned.
So this is the advice I gave him.
Okay.
Do it. Go out and do your own business. Work for yourself. Own your own time. You'll figure it out.
So your biggest deal is just go for it. Don't
Go
let
for it.
fear stop you.
Correct. Go for it. Don't let fear stop you. If you're doing it for somebody, you're making them rich, you might as well make yourself rich.
Where were you 10 years ago, bro? Where were you when you did that carrying that graduate? Okay, what about you, Forrest?
I was scared behind the desk.
Exactly.
So what I'm seeing from some of the younger guys that want to do it is everybody's in Facebook, like getting Facebook advice, asking the same question over and over, and getting the wrong answer too, by the way.
Right.
Getting the wrong answer. And then, so that's one group. They're getting the advice from the wrong group. I mean, they're all just sitting on Facebook looking for likes up to their comment and all that. So they're getting the wrong advice. But then you have the other ones that are doing the research and all that, but they're being told it's not a good time. Interest rates are too high. And, we had a pandemic and inflation is so I'm sure me and Ruben are about the same age. Whenever we went into the job market, the Great Recession, 07, 08, like there just wasn't no jobs to be had whenever, but we made it through life. We did it. But back then, if you had a problem, you couldn't pull out your phone and ask a question on Facebook. You couldn't YouTube, where is, YouTube video on how to find the transmission fuel plug because there's not a dipstick no more. Now you can just pull out your phone and in about 5 minutes, you can find the answer.
Dang near anything.
Back in our younger days, when we was in our 20s, you had to just scroll through first you had to let the AOL dial up on the modem, and you had to be in the office in front of the computer.
Yeah.
And if you spent long enough,
I agree.
like there's struggles, right? There was a pandemic, there's inflation, there's this and that. But there's always, there's never a snapshot you take that there's not economically interest rates are too high, interest rates are too low, I'm too young, my credit score, there's always an excuse. But the truth is, do you have to do it? Yes, but you can't be making excuses. You got to find, for example, through the pandemic, like you said, a lot of people made a lot of money because they had figured it out. Obviously, us entering into the pandemic, did it help us? Did it hurt us that there was a pandemic? We don't know because we was just kind of
just trying to live.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my piece of two, here's my advice. I'm older than both of y'all. Like y'all could be my kids, right? I would say the single number one thing that I have learned that I would share with this audience is this. For me, when I went through all this therapy stuff that I just went through, there was an expression that says you can't pour from an empty cup. So as you're trying to meet everybody else's needs, you're trying to take care of your family, you're trying to take care of your boss, trying to take care of this and that, your customers, you have to make sure that you take some time for yourself. And the second, and this is actually the first thing I learned, most important thing is that you have to determine what your core values are. And core values, you can look it up online and kind of understand it, but as I understand it, there's 80 plus things that human beings can pursue. 80 plus of them. Family, great sex life, respect. There's all these words that are attributed to emotions that you place some type of priority on. And we go through life thinking they're all important, all 80 plus of them. And that's impossible. You can't serve that many masters. So in the therapy thing, they encourage you to identify your top 10. And when you're having to cut things out of your life and not prioritize them and focus on a reduced number, it becomes harder and harder to cut things out of your life. But what it does is it focuses your attention on the key things that are really, really important to you. And so if you're trying to live your life with other people's values and they don't align with your core values, it causes a disruption in your brain. And it can cause all kinds of collateral damage. It can wreck marriages. It can mess up children. It can destroy you. It leads to addictive tendencies. There's all these negative things. But I would encourage you to determine what your core values. I like to focus on your top 3. And once you determine what your top 3 values are, then figure out what actions support those core values. Do the things. It's like for me, one of my core values is inner peace. It's critical to my entire well-being. And so I had to sit down and identify actions and activities that support my inner peace. Found out music is really important to me. Well, for the last 10 years, music was pretty much gone. It didn't exist. I didn't really listen to it. I wasn't playing music. And so that cup wasn't getting filled at all, right? And once I realized that, fishing, I've been a fisherman since a little kid. Well, I cut that out of my life entirely, Well, guess what? If I want to support my core value, I need to make some time to go fishing. I didn't say catching. I just said fishing. I just don't I catch a thing, but just the mere action of forcing myself to go out on a lake or a pond or a river and just wait, and try and catch a fish gives me peace. So once through the therapy, I found out that, these are some things that support me. And the other one that I would share with everybody is that if y'all don't believe there's a God, that's your business. I do. And if there's a God, God says there's another guy, that wants to take us out. And if you think that we're fighting battles against a weak opponent, you're an idiot. Because the enemy is trying to destroy you, destroy your family, destroy everything you believe in, tell you you're a loser constantly. And so I would encourage you to reorient yourself and get put on that, what I call the armor of God. Spend some time talking to God and understanding where your strength comes from and where your blessings come from. That, to me, that's what I would share with anybody else.
So there's an exercise for kind of what you're saying. It's the will of life. And, Zig Ziglar talked about it before him. If you go back to the 50s, some of them preachy sounding motivational speakers. And so the will of life, based on who you're looking at, is 7 to 9 categories. One of them would be religion. One of them would be your career. Your family usually hits it. Friends hits it. Your personal health.
Right.
And so your kids is, its own. And if you just do the exercise of, it's a pie chart for each of the 7, and you fill them up, this one's only 20%, but this one's full. Well, sometimes your career's doing great. You're making the money, the shop's running smoothly, but your kid brings home an F on a report card, or you have not went to church. You have let your values go, we'll say, because you're not going to church. Maybe this customer is dissatisfied. This was dissatisfied. And you're not living up to your values, right?
Right.
So you want the will of life to be kind of equaled out, 80% all the way around, would be perfect, because you can't do 100% of everything.
Sure.
But when you do the exercise of, doing the will of life, that when you get down below 50, you need to work on that area, whether it be your kids or maybe you've had too much fun lately and everything's going good, but the business is crumbling. The career is crumbling.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I didn't know about the wheel of life, but the goal is to understand that we need balance. You could be successful in business and your health goes down the toilet. You could be great, with your personal relationships, but you're not taking care of your business stuff and that falls. So you got to kind of find a happy balance. But the goal of today's show is to have you guys I'm trying to get with guys that are just normal folks, because I know a lot of you guys were thinking about starting your own business and you're terrified. I just turned 65 and I'm terrified. I'm freaking terrified. I know a lot of stuff, but for me to start Service Trucks and Service Trucks USA and to do all this is terrifying, because I've always worked for somebody and I've made companies millions of dollars. And even I got to be bold enough to have confidence in myself. And the reason I'm doing it isn't necessarily make money. I like to make money, but the goal is this hanging out with young guys and hanging out with anybody and talking about life is what I enjoy. That's filling my cup. That's giving me this peace. So I wanted you guys to know that there are great young men and women in this country. And this idea that there isn't any hope of the American dream is a BS. Okay, here's proof right here in front of you of two guys. I don't think either one of you has college, right?
No.
Neither do I.
I got a tech school degree.
Okay,
Yeah, associate's degree in tech school.
I'm a land surveyor, okay?
Yeah.
I went to apprenticeship school. But in terms of the world standard, we may not be, the cat's meow in terms of, having a bachelor's or a master's and all that kind of crap. But we're all able to feed our families, take care of ourselves, and we're pursuing our individual dreams. And I want you to know that this is the truth, the reality of America. We're a great country. We're resilient. We're hardworking, and there are great women and they're great fathers. And I'm here to tell you that we're going to be fine. We're going to be good. All we have to do is stay together. We're not talking about all the evils of this administration or this, we're just living life to the best of our ability and trying to take care of each other. We're making friends and looking out for each other. And really, that's all that life is all about. And would you guys agree with me?
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. So, yeah, it's a little different podcast today, I know, but it's my show and I can do it any way I want. And that's how we're doing today's show. So I appreciate you guys for watching and listening. Now, I'm going to give a shout out to my two buddies here. This is Forrest. His company is RTS Restoration. Don't call him, call me, because, that way I can get in on the action. But does a great job. He does all of my refurbs. So if you're buying the truck through me, there's a 90% chance that Forrest Company has done it. And then if we're buying a body or an upfit, if you need something, it's going to come from Ruben and his company, Longhorn Is it Longhorn Upfitters?
Fitters, yes, sir.
Longhorn Upfitters. They're located in Fort Worth. You can reach any of us. There'll be links to both of their pages on this page. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check us out on YouTube. It's Service Trucks USA, and be a part of our community, which is servicetrucks.com. That's our community. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen and watch. And I appreciate you. Y'all have a great day. Peace out.
Subscribe right now to Service Trucks USA on your favorite platform so you'll never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Service Trucks USA. That's Service TRUX USA, where you'll get even more great content, discussions, and resources related to vocational service trucks. I look forward to getting to know each of you better. Until then, keep your fingers dirty and your nose clean. This is your guy, your man, your dude, KJ, signing off.